Hello, everybody. Meteorologist Hutch Johnson joining you. We have a big time pattern shift that's going to take place. And yes, it does look like some rounds of snow will hit the western and northern Rocky Mountains, some substantial snow. We're going to do some model comparisons, not only on snowfall, and we're going to take a look as well at the model comparisons for the track and the timing, because there are some variances here, and this is a little ways out, but it does look like numerous models are on with the forecast. Let's get right to it. Let's start with a look at the European model. Now, I will tell you, as a meteorologist, one of the models that I do like best when we get out beyond, say, 4 or 5 days that tends to be a little more consistent is the good old-fashioned European model. Now, the European model shows this as we go through. Right now, very quiet conditions in the northern plains and the central and southern plains as well. But this track is going to change as we undergo a little bit of shift in the jet stream out to the west. So as we go through, you can see up here Thursday, Friday of this week, we'll have a little weather hiccup working its way through the Great Lakes, bringing some showers to the central plains. Nothing too substantial there. Again, this is heading into Thursday night and into Friday morning. Then as we let this thing pan out, this moves out. East Coast dry, all the way across the lower 48 pretty much dry. But look what is hitting the Pacific Northwest as we close out the weekend. Now, this is getting towards the good old-fashioned Halloween forecast, and look what goes on. Trough of low pressure digs in out off of the Aleutian Island chain, bringing snow to the elevated terrain of parts of British Columbia, straight south into parts of Idaho. It's rain. This is on the 28th. Now, this system is going to work its way through the Rockies, release and bring a chance for some snow to dive in to the Rockies of western Montana, Idaho, down into Wyoming, mainly the western half, and parts of Colorado, according to the European model. This is by Tuesday, the 29th. So we're closing out the month and heading in toward the good old holiday of Halloween with a chance of some snow. Look at this. Now, the European model really has some heavy precipitation building into this system as it wraps around some Gulf of Mexico moisture up into the elevated terrain of Wyoming, and it slams it into that elevated terrain. That lifting process creates an enhancement of the snowfall amounts out there, and that's what we'll be watching for. This is a typical Colorado style low, and the track is huge on who gets to see or who sees the majority of the snow. This storm system is set to release toward the Rocky Mountains. It will not take snow with it as it's warmer on the plains, but certainly some much needed moisture for parts of Minnesota and the northern Great Lakes, as well as the western Great Lakes. Shower thunderstorm accompanying these storms, one or two may be strong, moving through parts of Iowa and into the central plains states. Now look at what's happening again in the Pacific Northwest heading into the 30th of the month. So heading towards Halloween, another system dives into the Rockies, bringing a chance of some snow waves there. Same place. It's like a train of snow slamming through the Rockies. And then here comes an even bigger one as we go through. So a number of storms tracking through the Rockies of Western Canada, right into the central Rockies of the United States, at least on this particular model. Looks like we'll see a chance for some snow there. How does this model compare when we look at the American model? Now, we're only going to go out through around the 2nd of November, since that's as far out as the European model would go, and we're going to see some similarities. A little weather wiggle wobbling through the central and northern plains. Here we go with the main system making its work way into the Pacific Northwest. So the Cascades, the northern Rockies, the Bitterroots will see a chance for some rain changing over, mixing with snow as we go through the 28th and into the 29th. This storm system then develops as a Colorado low right here in Colorado as we head into, check it out, the date on this, Tuesday, the 29th. That releases through parts of the Dakotas and the western Great Lakes. Sound familiar? That's because it is. The European and the American model both showing the timing of a storm exiting out of the Rockies, while some substantial snow will accumulate in portions of the central Rockies, Wyoming, and Colorado. The next wave moves in on the American model as well as we head into the 2nd of the month and the 3rd, but this one brings a chance of, oh, I'm telling you, some much needed rain to parts of Minnesota, and a chance for some rain mixing with and changing to snow on the backside of this system as it meanders its way up into parts of Manitoba. Okay, that's the American model. Now we may as well look at the third model of choice. This one will be, I am going to select the Canadian model because A, we're going to see what's going on Now, check it out. As we go through the period, we got our little weather wiggle. 3 models in a row. Weather wiggle as we close out this work week and head into the weekend. That's out of here. Doesn't impact the East Coast. Things stay very, very quiet in the eastern half or third of the United States until the big event here, Colorado low, as we head toward the latter portion of the month. This is the 29th into the 30th. So Tuesday into Wednesday of next week, big time snow potential. Wyoming and Colorado on the third straight model. That releases, look at this, Montana snow. Western North Dakota snow on this particular model run with a big time rain event as we go through the scary day and hours before Halloween. Is that Halloween Eve? I'll get back to my advisors on that. Checking out that system, it looks like it explodes, becoming a very large low pressure system over central Canada and moves out. So this Canadian model, much different in that capacity and really cuts off that flow of storms from the part of the Aleutians that we're seeing. So now we've done that. We've compared 3 different models and we see at least through around that Halloween timeframe, most models are in pretty good agreement with a weather wobble late this week on Friday, with a more substantial winter weather making system as we go from the 29th through the 30th. What happens beyond that? These models start to diverge greatly in what they are answering. So how much snow are we talking here, meteorologist Hutch Johnson? Well, self, let's get into that. Let's take a look at some winter weather tools. Now, I do want to take a moment and describe something to you when you're looking at some of these models. This site is called Pivotal Weather, Pivotal Weather. Great place to look. These are not forecasts. This is called model guidance. Model guidance, something we look at many. We weigh in on our experience as meteorologists and forecasters, and we try to see if we think one has a better handle on the situation versus the other. Now, when we're looking at snowfall potential, for these 3 models to be able to compare apples to oranges and not compare apples to oranges, rather, we're going to look at the 10-to-1 snowfall rate and total accumulation over the whole time frame here. These numbers are going to be ginormous, and they are not particularly useful in most circumstances. But here's what I can tell you as a meteorologist. When you're looking at the ranges of snowfall that you're going to see on this, and I'm going to zip through. We're still on the Canadian model, and we're going to zip through to the end. You're going to see, here's wave 1 coming through the Rockies. Look at that. Wyoming, big time. Western Colorado, big time. Parts of Utah, Salt Lake City, look out and look at those Rocky Mountains, Western Montana and Idaho. Then we get wave 2 moving through that escapes up into parts of the Dakotas. And we'll stop here as we get into the second. That's as far out as this model goes, with that third system making its way through the Rockies. That's 1, 2, 3 systems. How much snow does each colors represent there, meteorologist Hutch Johnson? Well, let me answer that. Where you see these orange hues here, what I want you to do and keep in mind is that we rarely see snowfall that is this widespread when it comes down to it. This is going to be snow that impacts the elevated terrain, elevations above, say, 5,000 to 6,000 feet for those second and third systems. So keeping that in mind, that will play a big role. But what I do like to see is the upper range that these models throw out and the lower range. And then know that it's usually not as widespread as it looks on these particular maps. So if you're seeing folks broadcast this information, those are some things to keep in mind. Always take these broadcasts that people do with a grain of salt. Now I'm rolling my mouse over and you're seeing 1 to 2 feet in parts of western Wyoming. So once you get into the Teton range there, those elevated peaks could see a foot of snow, maybe a little bit more. I don't like to get carried away and go with only the biggest number we see. Now, when you get into Colorado, those numbers are a little lower as these systems will be coming up from the north and west, and they're going to be relying on where the low tracks out of the Rockies. Just to the north of the position of the low is where the heavier snow will fall. This model says, the Canadian model says, Wyoming, get those shovels ready in the elevated terrain. Now in Colorado, the mountains west of, say, Colorado Springs, west of Pueblo, west of the Denver metro area there, will get some snow potential. Now that means as you rise up into the hills and you get above 5,280 feet in Denver, your chances will increase of seeing some accumulation. In town, the Canadian model says we may get some in the Denver metro area and in Cheyenne, but those chances will go up for the elevated terrain of the neighborhoods that are in the foothills of the Rockies. Now let's switch models back to that American model. We'll go in backwards order here. This one we will only take out, it does go farther, by the way. The American model goes out a lot farther, but that doesn't mean it's more better. because the farther we get out in time, the bigger these errors can become. Let's just go through the second, since that's what the model in the European looks at. Less widespread or heavy snow across a greater part of Wyoming. This may be a little bit more believable, as a matter of fact, and heavier snow in the mountains of Colorado, but only the west, with the Front Range in Denver, Colorado Springs, and Cheyenne getting very little snow. But once you get north, maybe towards Douglas, Wyoming, boom, the snow amounts increase. Now, the range, what we look at here, in the elevated terrain of parts of Colorado, 2 feet and as much as 3 feet of snow being picked up by this model. This is where you really got to take a grain of salt. Will it be that much? Maybe only in the most elevated of peaks with the right situation. In Wyoming, as we get into north central parts of the state, not far from Casper, we're going to see some amounts there that could be 6 inches to a foot of snow. Western Montana and Idaho appear to have more of a chance, according to this model, with 5 to 10 inches of snow, more widespread across the elevated parts of northern Idaho. Down in the basin, not so much snow for you folks, right? Look at this, those Cascades out there to the west. We're talking the state of Oregon and points north into Washington state. There's some healthy snowfall amounts there. And look at the shoreline of British Columbia. Do you see that number right there? It says 6.9. That's 69 inches of snow. Do you think that's going to happen? Well, there's a lot of moisture rolling off the Pacific Ocean with this. So there will be the potential for some higher elevations seeing over, I will say, 36 inches of snow. So let's just go there. Now let's take a look at that European model. And again, for the far out time ranges, this is the model that Hutch uses as a choice. It's usually a little bit more consistent. It looks a lot like the Canadian model. Wyoming, western Colorado, the elevated terrain is where it falls. On the eastern plains, a little bit less. And this one does not have impacts out into portions of North Dakota and South Dakota like the other two models did. So the snowfall estimates here, similar. 5 to 10 inches appear likely in some spots elevated above 5,000 feet the way it looks now. And we will have that opportunity to see some snow in the great ski areas of, well, the Tetons of Wyoming. We're talking Jackson Hole. We're talking all the way down into western parts of Colorado as well. Aspen. How's Aspen? Well, pretty good if they get some snow, right? Same thing for Vail. And again, heavier snow amounts as we take a peek up here into ports of British Columbia. Woo-wee, 46 inches. That's 1, 2, carry the 1. Wow. Now that's pushing 4 feet of snow, right? So that's a lot of snow potential. Very quiet in the Central Plains. So that's a look at snowfall. Here is a quick peek at the month of November's forecast. I do want to take that out. And as we load this up, I do want to point out we're going to look at temperature anomalies or changes from normal or from the folks at the Climate Prediction Center real quickly, and then we'll wrap this up. So let's go right over here and take a look at this as we look at some guidance, not model guidance. It's based off of model data, but this is from the Climate Prediction Center. And we'll start with, well, because we don't want to forget Alaska. Who can forget the great state, the huge state of Alaska? Story of two sides of the coin, if you will. Look at the northern portions of Alaska up here. Boy, I got to tell you, that orange color says that the temperatures here will be more likely to be above average in northernmost Alaska. Where you see the gray, that's just a map color. Equal chances of being a little above or below average. Not a clear signal. But the Aleutian chain, as you get down towards Anchorage and out towards the Aleutians, that is where we expect the chance of being a little cooler than average based on what the climate prediction is looking at for the month of November. And in the lower 48, well, you can say this. The heat really focuses in places like Oklahoma, most of Texas, and the desert Southwest. And we'll have equal chances in the Pacific Northwest, Montana, Wyoming, of seeing about average weather, or maybe a little below or a little above. So in other words, when we forecast out for a month ahead, our ability to be precise on any given day is not so good. But we can take the cluster of days, take a look at the overall pattern shifting that we foretell and the models foretell, and we can say we have a very good chance of above average temperatures in the eastern one half of the United States. By the way, the lighter colors that you see here near Minneapolis and Fargo, as well as Sioux Falls and Des Moines, Iowa, is about a 33% chance of being above normal. That's what that means. A much higher chance, by the way, where you see the darker orange colors, a 50% chance of being above normal for the entirety of the month of November. So that's a look at the climate outlook for temperature. Now let's take a look at that precipitation. And we'll go ahead and we'll start in the lower 48, and you'll see dry, dry, dry where it's going to be the warmest. So from Louisiana and Mississippi all the way out through parts of New Mexico, as well as Colorado in the southern part in particular, drier than average weather expected there. Equal chances of being above or below average in the gray states. And then the best chance of above average weather continues in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, now let's take a look at our friends in the great state of Alaska. And what we're looking at there is a wetter than average spell of weather in November up there in the northern part of the state. Sneaking down south, and that's the great state of Hawaii. Looks like equal chances of precipitation. We'll slip this over to temperature since I skipped you on that, because we don't want to forget about the islands. And there's no clear signal of it being above or below average for temperature either. I'm meteorologist Hutch Johnson. I sure hope you appreciated this content. I've been a broadcasting meteorologist for the better part of 30 years, 27 years on the air. Right now, I stream. I love streaming, and I love sharing my knowledge of weather. If you've enjoyed it, please consider hitting the like button. And if you're watching me here on YouTube, I'd love to have you smash that subscribe button. Thank you so very much. You can find out more about me by checking out some of my videos here. I'll link them to you at the buttons at the top. But for now, have a wonderful, wonderful week and have a happy Halloween. I'll be checking in with updates like this more frequently. But for now, you can get more content from Hutch right here on my website, hutchesweather.com. Anytime, anywhere. Follow me on Facebook. My handle there is Hutch Johnson, Chief Meteorologist. And again, subscribe on YouTube. Thanks so much.